Good evening, listener. In the year 1348, even chamber pots had etiquette. You couldn't just dump one whenever you pleased, not in a monastery where silence was sacred. Glances were measured, and dignity lived even in the darkest corners of the night. Tonight, we won't chase grand events or famous names. Instead, we'll walk slowly through cloisters and stone corridors, where life is quiet, careful, and strangely comforting. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our fireside journey. Now dim the lights, tuck yourself in, and let the stillness of another century carry you towards sleep. You awaken slowly, or perhaps it's more accurate to say that consciousness gently reasserts itself, much like the subtle shift in light before dawn. The first sensation to greet you, before even the faintest glimmer of light can penetrate the thick, woven fabric of your eyelids, is the smell of damp stone. It is a pervasive, earthy scent, deeply ingrained in the very air around you, a smell that seems to seep into every fiber of the coarse wool that blankets you and into the aged, unyielding wood of your humble bed frame. It is the kind of dampness that clings, stubbornly and intimately, to every surface, refusing to be dislodged. The year, a distant concept now, is 1348. You reside, as you have for all your living memory, in a modest, unassuming cottage. It stands, somewhat precariously, on the very edge of a small, largely forgotten village, nestled quietly within the sprawling, verdant expanse of the English countryside. The thatch above your head, a thick, protective layer of dried reeds and straw, is meticulously lined with dried heather, painstakingly gathered and woven with the explicit intention of keeping out this pervasive damp, of providing a barrier against the relentless chill that perpetually threatens to invade your small sanctuary. But it hasn't worked. Not really. Not truly. A quiet sigh escapes your lips, a barely audible exhalation that acknowledges a long-held, unspoken truth. Nothing ever does. The damp, you've learned, is an intrinsic part of this existence, an inescapable companion. You stretch, slowly and deliberately, beneath a coarse woolen blanket. It is heavy, providing a comforting weight, but its texture is rough against your skin. This blanket, you know, carries a quiet history. It was once your older brother's, its fibers worn smooth in places by his countless nights of sleep, by his restless turns. And before that, it belonged to your grandfather, carrying the faint, almost imperceptible scent of generations of quiet slumber. The warmth it offers is not absolute, merely a slight mitigation against the pervasive chill that seems to cling to the very air within the cottage. Outside, a rooster crows. Its call is sharp and clear, slicing through the thick, pre-dawn quiet, a familiar herald of the approaching day. Not that you truly need its noisy proclamation to know the time. For years, for as long as you could remember, the monks at the nearby priory used to diligently ring the bell at dawn. Its clear, resonant peal would travel across the dew-laden fields, a reliable, comforting signal that marked the beginning of another day, a predictable rhythm that anchored the village's awakening. But the monks have been silent now, for weeks. The bell, once a constant, unwavering presence, has ceased its daily summons. Its absence is a quiet void and noticeable punctuation in the slow unfolding of your mornings. You don't know precisely why this change has occurred. Not precisely. No, you only know that fewer people are now venturing out into the vast, open fields to perform their daily chores. The usual murmur of voices and distant clatter of tools noticeably diminished. And Father Michael, whose kindly, weathered face was a familiar sight, whose footsteps often paused at your door, stopped coming by altogether some time ago. The silence from the priory, the emptiness of the fields, and the absence of Father Michael are not dramatic omens. They are merely quiet observations. Small, unsettling shifts in the established order of your world. The days you've noticed pass strangely now. There's a peculiar, almost unsettling fluidity to time. You used to sleep in two distinct parts, just like everyone else in the village, a rhythm inherited from generations past. The first sleep would commence at dusk, as the last vestiges of light faded from the sky. A quiet surrender to the encroaching darkness. Then you would awaken sometime after midnight, emerging from a deep slumber for a few quiet hours. This nocturnal interlude was a time for quiet thought, for mending clothes by the faint glow of a dying ember, for whispered conversations, or perhaps for simply gazing out at the star-dusted sky through the small, unglazed window. After these few hours of quiet wakefulness, you would return to your bed for the second sleep, a deeper, more profound rest, before finally rising again at the first, pale hint of dawn. It was a predictable, comforting cycle, a rhythm that resonated with the ebb and flow of the natural world. But lately, this ingrained rhythm has been subtly disrupted. Your sleep stretches longer now, sometimes blurring the boundaries between the two distinct phases. Sometimes, you find yourself sleeping the whole night through, a continuous, unbroken slumber that feels strangely heavy, almost unnatural in its profound depth. And then, at other times, inexplicably, you don't sleep at all, lying awake in the pervasive darkness. Your mind a quiet landscape of fragmented thoughts and unanswered questions, listening to the unfamiliar silence of the night. There are rumors, of course, whispers carried on the thin, cold air, passed from one hushed voice to another, gaining subtle distortions with each retelling. That something profoundly unsettling, has come from the ports, from the distant coastal towns where the land meets the restless sea. That ships, great wooden vessels that normally bring cargoes of wine, its rich scent still faintly imagined, and salted fish, piled high and gleaming, brought something else this time. Something unseen, something terrible. You heard that in the city? London, perhaps? Yes, London, that vast, sprawling metropolis, far, far away, a place of distant noise and unimaginable crowds. You heard that in this distant city, people simply drop dead in the streets, their bodies left unattended for days, a gruesome spectacle for all to see, uncollected, unwanted. You don't know if this particular detail is true, if such a horrific thing could truly happen. The mind struggles to grasp such a stark image, but you do know, with a quiet, undeniable certainty that settles like a cold stone in your stomach, that you haven't seen Thomas, your neighbor, whose cottage stands just a short walk down the muddy track. In 3 full days now, his customary morning greetings, once a reliable sound, have ceased. His small patch of garden, usually meticulously tended, looks unkempt, untended. You swing your legs slowly over the edge of the bed. The movement is stiff, your joints protesting with a quiet ache that permeates your limbs, a familiar companion to the pervasive damp. Your bare feet meet the cold, hard-packed earth floor. You reach for your boots, which lie discarded beside the bed. They are cold and cracked, their leather worn and stiff with age. One of them, you note with a quiet sigh, has developed a persistent leak, allowing the cold, damp earth to seep in with every step. You light a stub of a tallow candle, its small, flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows on the uneven walls of your cottage, illuminating the familiar, humble space. Its faint, smoky light barely penetrates the deep gloom. Your gaze, as it drifts across the room, falls upon the chamber pot in the corner. It is full. Again. Its presence, a silent testament to the passing night, seems heavier than usual. You used to empty it every single morning. A simple, unthinking routine. A quick task performed without hesitation. You would carry it to the trench that ran behind the house, a short, familiar walk through the thin, morning mist. its contents deposited without a second thought. But lately, a new sensation has taken root within you. You've grown hesitant. A quiet reluctance has begun to bloom, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in your daily habits. You've heard things, vague warnings, half-whispered fears, that the plague, this unseen terror, this whispered scourge, lingers in the very air, a pervasive, invisible threat, or that it rides silently on the breath of the wind, carried from distant, afflicted places. That nighttime, with its pervasive darkness and its unseen movements, is the worst time, the hour when the unseen danger is most potent, most likely to strike. So you wait. You compel yourself to wait. You wait until midday, hoping that the sun, however weak, might somehow purify the air, render it less dangerous or longer. Sometimes you wait until the chamber pot, left undisturbed for too long, finally spills its contents, a silent, slow overflow that spreads across the rough, packed earth floor, its cold, damp presence a chilling reminder of your newfound reluctance, your quiet, internal fear. This, they say in hushed, trembling voices, is how it begins. Not with a roar, not with a sudden, dramatic declaration, but with a smell, with a quiet shift in routine, with a silent, pervasive fear that slowly, inexorably, seeps into every crack and crevice of your life, settling deep within your bones, just like the cold, damp stone of your cottage. The next morning, or what you slowly begin to perceive as morning, for the familiar cues have shifted, subtly, unsettlingly, you awaken not to the expected sounds of a new day, but to an unusual, profound silence. It is a stillness that presses in from all sides, a heavy blanket of quiet. No rooster crows its familiar, sharp greeting, no insistent herald marking the passage of dawn. The air outside seems utterly devoid of the usual sounds of awakening life. No carts creak past your cottage door, their wooden wheels groaning softly on the muddy track. Even the wind, which so often whispers or sighs through the eaves of your thatched roof, feels as though it has paused, holding its breath, contributing to this pervasive absence of sound. The stillness is almost palpable, a thick, unmoving presence that permeates the very air within your small dwelling. You rise slowly, each movement deliberate, your body sluggish and heavy from the uneven, disturbed sleep of the night before. Your limbs feel weighted, as though they have sunk into the damp earth itself during your slumber. The coals in the hearth, where a fire should still be gently smoldering, are long cold, reduced to a fine, gray ash that offers no warmth. You fumble, a clumsy, hesitant motion, with flint and steel, your fingers stiff with the lingering chill. You strike again and again, the tiny dull sparks scattering fruitlessly into the darkness. You persist, patiently, with a quiet determination born of necessity, striking until, finally, after what feels like a considerable effort, a reluctant, tiny flame catches on a wisp of tinder, barely visible in the dim light. It flickers hesitantly, then grows, casting long, dancing shadows on the uneven, whitewashed walls. You used to wake up, predictably, in the middle of the night, during that familiar interlude between first and second sleep. You would sit by that very fire, its gentle warmth a comfort in the dark, and you would pray. Everyone did. The quiet hours between the first sleep and the second were traditionally meant for reflection, for quiet tasks that did not require much light or vigorous movement. They were for writing in ledgers, for mending tears in fabric by the faint glow of dying embers, or for whispering with God, a private communion in the deep quiet of the night. But no one, it seems, keeps to that old, comforting rhythm now. Not since the fever came, not since the whispers of the plague began to circulate through the village like a chilling draft. The long, continuous sleep, or the restless, sleepless night, has replaced the segmented slumber, a subtle but profound shift in the fabric of daily life. You step outside, pulling the rough woolen shawl tighter around your shoulders, and squint into the pale, diffused light of the morning. The air outside is thick. It feels heavy, almost viscous, and utterly unmoving, devoid of any discernible breeze. Across the way, Thomas's small, familiar house is still shuttered, its windows closed like sightless eyes. You see no thin plume of smoke curling lazily from his chimney, no sign of life stirring within. A quiet thought drifts through your mind. You wonder whether you should knock, whether you should bring something. A small portion of yesterday's bread, perhaps. A whispered word of concern. But you don't. The subtle hesitation from the day before, the quiet fear of unseen things, remains. A cold, persistent tremor in your chest. The threshold of Thomas's door, once a familiar boundary, now feels like a vast, uncrossable chasm. Instead, you turn, slowly, deliberately, toward the priory. It stands, a quiet, ancient silhouette, at the very edge of the village, just beyond the small, moss-covered stone bridge that arches gently over the narrow, sluggish stream. You remember, with a quiet fondness that feels strangely distant now, the way the priory looked on feast days. It would be draped with brightly colored cloth, vibrant banners fluttering gently in the breeze, transforming its gray stone into a place of joyous celebration. The air would be filled with the joyous, resonant sound of singing, voices raised in harmonious praise. Today, however, it is merely gray. Its stone walls seem to absorb the muted light, reflecting no cheer. As you approach, your footsteps quiet on the muddy track, you hear something faint, something that drifts on the unmoving air bells. But it is not the clear, resonant peals of morning mass, the familiar, precise chiming that once marked the hours with comforting regularity. No, this is a different sound. A disjointed clang, dull and irregular, like iron striking against wood or against stone, a sound of heavy, unpracticed effort. The rhythm is broken, uncertain. You pause, your head tilted slightly, listening intently to the unusual, discordant sound. You continue to approach, drawn by the unsettling sound. The massive wooden doors of the priory, usually kept securely closed, are ajar, standing slightly open, inviting you into the deeper quiet within. As you step across the worn threshold, the air inside shifts. It smells of incense, a faint, lingering aroma of devotion, mixed disturbingly with the sharp, acrid scent of vinegar. The monks, those figures of quiet constancy, are fewer than you remember. The vast, echoing space seems emptier, more hollow. A young one, you think his name was Brother Ellis, is methodically mopping the cold, stone floor with slow, circular strokes, his movements deliberate, almost trance-like. The water in his bucket, which he carries with quiet care, sloshes gently with each movement. He does not look up, his gaze fixed on the task, his face unreadable. You find a pew near the back, a quiet, unobtrusive spot, and sit. The wooden bench is hard beneath you, its surface worn smooth by countless bodies, by countless hours of quiet contemplation. The space between the sounds of the bells is longer now, stretched out into uncomfortable silences, and each successive ring, when it finally comes, seems to resonate not as a welcome, but more like a stark, insistent warning, echoing ominously in the vast, empty space. You find yourself growing tired, not with the familiar, heavy weariness that precedes a good, restorative sleep. No, this is something stranger, a kind of pervasive stillness, a deep quiet that seems to settle not just upon your mind, but deep within the very bones of your body. A profound and unsettling calm that feels less like peace and more like resignation. Brother Ellis, moving with his same slow, deliberate pace, finally finishes his work. He carries the bucket, its brown, murky water sloshing faintly, toward the cloister door, a dark opening in the wall. You wonder, with a distant curiosity, if he'll pour the tainted water into the small, carefully tended herb garden, its healing plants now vulnerable. Or perhaps into the drainage channel that flows into the stream, carrying the unseen. He disappears through the dark opening before you can clearly see his intention. Before you can discern the destination of the brown water, the faint, wispy smoke from the lingering candle on the altar swirls slowly upward. A silent, ephemeral dance in the dim light. You do not pray. The words feel stuck, meaningless in this profound quiet. You just sit. You simply exist in the stillness, a quiet observer in a silent world. It is well past midday, the sun's position indicated by the subtle shift of the pale light through the priory windows, before you fully realize how long you've been sitting there. The hours have blurred, losing their distinction in the pervasive stillness. You rise slowly, your knees aching with a dull, familiar complaint. With a quiet sigh, you make your way back home, your footsteps slow and deliberate on the muddy track. The chamber pot, its presence a quiet reminder of your reluctance, still waits in the corner of your cottage, its contents undisturbed since the night before. This time, however, a subtle shift has occurred within you. This time, you do not hesitate. You pick it up carefully, its weight familiar in your hands, and carry it, with a steady resolve, through the small garden gate. You empty its contents without a second thought. Behind the sheltering branches of the old yew tree, its dark leaves a silent witness. The lingering fear from the previous day has, for now, receded. No one sees you. The village remains quiet, hushed. No one says a word. The silence is profound. That night, a deep, heavy slumber finally claims you. You sleep straight through, a continuous, unbroken stretch of unconsciousness, from the moment your head touches the coarse, woolen blanket until the indistinct light of the next morning. The rhythm of your sleep has altered once more, shifting in response to the quiet, pervasive changes in the world around you, a silent adaptation to the long, long night. The candle you light tonight, a stub of tallow clutched between your thumb and forefinger, flickers more than usual. Its small, hesitant flame dances with an agitated, almost frantic energy, struggling against the stillness of the air within your cottage. The tallow itself is old, its surface pitted and uneven, and you, in a moment of absent-mindedness, or perhaps fatigue, trimmed the wick too short earlier in the day. Now, it sputters and hisses, a quiet, persistent complaint against the pervasive dampness of the room. Each tiny sputter sends a fleeting, almost imperceptible tremor through the air, and the shadow it casts on the rough, whitewashed wall behind it jumps and shivers, mimicking the flame's own fragile dance. You watch it for a long time, longer than you realize, perhaps more than an hour, though you have no way truly to tell the exact passage of time anymore. The sun, a pale, indifferent disk, went down behind a thick blanket of unbroken clouds once again, a gray curtain drawn across the sky, and you didn't bother to mark its slow descent, didn't notice the precise moment when day bled into twilight. The very notion of marking time seems less urgent now, less meaningful. You sit, slowly, in the wooden chair beside the hearth, not because you are truly cold, though a pervasive chill always lingers in the air, but simply because the chair is there, a familiar presence in the quiet room. The rough wood feels familiar beneath your hand as you settle. The stones of the hearth, which should retain a faint, lingering warmth from the day's fire, have long since cooled, absorbing the ambient chill of the cottage. They offer no comfort, no residual heat. You didn't gather wood today. The thought, a gentle, unspoken instruction, had drifted through your mind at some point, a vague intention. You meant to. You always mean to lately. The act of gathering wood, of breaking branches, of carrying the bundles, once a simple, automatic chore, now feels impossibly distant, a task that requires too much effort. But your limbs felt heavy, weighted with an unseen burden, and your thoughts felt slow, sluggish, as though they were moving through thick, unseen water. The very notion of movement, of exertion, seemed to possess a daunting quality, an invisible barrier to action. Sleep does not come quickly anymore. The easy, segmented rhythm of your past nights has vanished entirely. When it does come now, it arrives all at once, abruptly, without warning, like a thick, silent mist that unexpectedly settles over the quiet moor, enveloping everything in its soft, unseeing embrace. One moment you are awake, your mind quietly ticking over, and the next, you are gone, pulled into a deep, blank unconsciousness. But tonight, it stays just out of reach, hovering teasingly at the edges of your awareness, like a shy animal that approaches but never quite allows itself to be caught. You reach for the clay cup that sits beside you, its surface cool and rough against your fingers. You sip water, a small deliberate act, the cool liquid tracing a quiet path down your throat. You listen. You listen to the persistent, rattling sound of the wind, a restless spirit, as it nudges and shakes the loose shutter on your small, unglazed window. It is a quiet, rhythmic complaint against the frame. You think about Thomas again, his shuttered house, the absence of smoke from his chimney, the unkempt garden. The questions about his fate remain, quiet and unanswered, drifting through your mind like smoke. You try to pray. The words, familiar from countless Sundays in the small, damp church, form slowly on your lips, a quiet murmur in the stillness of the room. But they fall flat, empty of true conviction, hollow, like pebbles dropped into a very deep well. The words refuse to connect. You can't remember the saints' names clearly, only fragmented pieces of their stories, like worn tapestry threads. One, you recall with a vague sense of unease, bled from the hands, a quiet agony. Another, you think, walked willingly into fire, a testament to unwavering faith. And one was eaten by wild dogs, or perhaps it was powerful, roaring lions. The exact detail eludes you. Lost in the murky depths of memory, you're not entirely sure which saint would offer protection from this new sickness, this unseen plague that creeps through the village like a thief in the night. You wonder, idly, if any of them could, truly, offer such profound protection against something so invisible, so pervasive. The thought feels too large, too distant, too abstract to fully grasp in the faint, flickering light of the candle. Outside, something howls. The sound is long and mournful, a high-pitched cry that drifts on the unmoving air, seeming to come from a great distance, yet somehow penetrating the thin walls of your cottage. Is it a dog, perhaps, lost, or simply voicing its loneliness to the cold, indifferent night sky? Or a fox, its wild cry echoing across the silent fields? Or something else entirely? The thought, fleeting and vague, offers no comfort. You don't move to the window. You've stopped doing that. There's never anything to see, really. Just the impenetrable darkness, the featureless void of the night, stretching out into a terrifying expanse where shadows play tricks on the tired eye. The only certainty out there is the pervasive cold, the unseen damp, and the growing, creeping silence. You empty the chamber pot just before sleeping now. It's a habit that has firmly taken root in these strange, new days. It feels like a small act of control, a tiny rebellion against the overwhelming uncertainty that has engulfed your world. A quiet way to keep something, anything, in order. To maintain a semblance of normalcy when everything else feels irrevocably altered. The contents steam slightly in the bitter cold as you pour them out behind the old yew tree, its ancient, gnarled branches reaching upward like silent, twisted arms against the dark sky. The faint vapor rises, visible for only a moment before dissipating into the chill night air. You wonder, idly, in a moment of detached observation, If the yew tree, with its silent endurance, resents you for this daily intrusion, for this quiet burden you place upon its roots, the thought is fleeting, an almost childlike query in the vast adult darkness. You go back inside, closing the wooden door with a soft, quiet thud that reverberates in the stillness. The candle, left unattended during your brief venture outside, has burned lower, its precious tallow significantly diminished. The small, pale light it casts now wavers, a fragile, dancing beacon against the encroaching darkness, a testament to its slow, relentless consumption. You lie down on your coarse, unyielding bed, pulling the familiar, heavy woolen blanket up to your chin. You do not expect sleep. The very notion feels distant, unattainable. Your mind, though quiet, is still subtly active, processing the lingering sensations of the day, the quiet observations, the pervasive cold, but it comes anyway, regardless of your expectations. It is soundless and blank, arriving without the familiar prelude of drowsiness, without the slow descent into dreams. It is a profound, almost total unconsciousness, a sleep without dreams. A deep, heavy slumber that offers no escape into imaginary worlds, only a quiet, temporary oblivion, a fleeting respite from the dull ache of existence. The pale flame of the candle continues its solitary dance, slowly, inexorably, burning lower in the dark, still room. You wake up again, in the profound, pervasive dark. It's not a sudden awakening, not a jarring return to consciousness. There's no distinct noise that jolts you, no vivid, disturbing dream that wrenches you from slumber. Instead, it's a slow, quiet surfacing, like a stone, gently rising through still, dark water. You are simply awake, with a faint, dull pressure that hums softly behind your eyes, a subtle ache that suggests a quiet tension. Accompanying this is a vague, unsettling sense that you should be doing something, that some unseen task or duty calls to you, even though you can't quite name it, can't quite grasp its meaning in the heavy stillness of the pre-dawn hours. You sit up slowly, carefully, in your bed. The coarse woolen blanket, heavy and familiar, shifts around you, its rough texture a quiet friction against your skin. You sit for a long moment, listening intently to the overwhelming silence that has settled upon your small cottage. Nothing stirs. Not a mouse in the walls. Not a restless rustle in the thatch above your head. The wind, which so often murmurs or sighs through the eaves, seems to be entirely asleep, a rare and unsettling stillness. The entire world, it feels, has paused, holding its breath in the deepest part of the night, suspended in an unmoving expanse of quiet. You remember, with a faint, almost melancholic sense of nostalgia, the way people used to talk about the night watch, those sacred communal hours between the first sleep and the second. It was often spoken of as a sacred pause, a precious, quiet time when the soul was believed to be closest to God, unburdened by the distractions of the day, open to divine whisperings. It was a time for deep reflection, for quiet communion, for purposeful, gentle tasks performed in the soft glow of a low-burning fire. But now, you observe with a quiet, internal sigh, it's just the hours when your back aches with a dull, persistent throb from the hard bed, and the last candle from the evening before has burned down too low to be useful. Its wick drowned in a pool of solidified tallow, offering no light, only a faint, lingering scent of smoke. You shuffle slowly from your bed, your bare feet meeting the cold, hard-packed earth floor with a soft thud that echoes strangely in the intense quiet. You move towards the hearth, a dark, empty space in the corner of the room, and poke at the ashes with a piece of charred wood. They are utterly cold, a fine, gray powder that stirs without warmth. You don't bother attempting to light another fire. It feels like too much trouble, too much effort for this profound hour. Besides, the wood you'd intended to gather earlier in the day remains uncollected, still damp from the outside air, stubbornly refusing to catch flame easily. You sit on the small, wooden stool instead, its hard surface providing a familiar point of contact. You pull a fraying shawl, its wool thin and worn in places, tightly around your shoulders, seeking any small measure of comfort or warmth. Then, you simply sit, staring into the dark, empty maw of the hearth, staring at nothing, your gaze unfocused, your mind drifting in the profound stillness. The stillness stretches, expanding outwards, filling every corner of the cottage, every corner of your mind. Time, a concept that now seems to have lost its sharp edges, passes like dripping wax from a slowly consumed candle. Each drop distinct, yet blurring into the next, marking a languid, almost imperceptible progression. You think about food, a faint, distant idea, but feel no true hunger, no gnawing emptiness in your stomach. The need for sustenance seems remote, a concern for a different, more vibrant time. You think about prayer, the familiar words a quiet echo in your memory, but feel no urgency, no compelling need to utter them. The connection to the divine feels distant, obscured by the profound quiet and the pervasive sense of unreality that has settled around you. Your mind drifts, unanchored like a loose boat upon a still, dark lake. You picture the yew tree out back, its ancient, gnarled branches reaching upward, standing silent and loyal, a dark, unmoving silhouette against the invisible sky. You picture the chamber pot beside your bed, its presence a quiet, patient weight, a silent testament to the body's quiet functions, unobtrusive and constant. These mundane images, simple and unremarkable, float gently through your consciousness, holding a strange, quiet significance in the deep quiet of the night. Eventually, after a period that could be minutes or could be hours, you stand. The movement is slow, deliberate, your joints protesting with a quiet crackle in the stillness. You feel the familiar, internal call to relieve yourself, a quiet, insistent need that pulls you from the stool. You don't bother lighting a lamp, or even fumbling for a new candle. There's no need. You know exactly where everything is in this small, familiar space. Your hands move by memory, guided by habit and instinct, finding the chamber pot with quiet certainty in the absolute darkness. The sound of liquid, soft and distinct, fills the quiet air for a brief moment before fading back into the encompassing silence. When you return to bed, the sheets feel colder than before, absorbing the ambient chill of the room, their thin fabric offering little warmth. You lie there for a long, immeasurable time, your eyes wide open in the profound darkness, staring at the unseen ceiling, listening to the quiet thrum of your own breath, the slow beat of your own heart. This, you realize with a quiet, internal clarity, is what night feels like now. It is neither true rest, the deep, restorative slumber of the past, nor is it true unrest, the agitated, anxious wakefulness that keeps the mind racing. Instead, it is just an expanse, a vast, featureless stretch of time, neither productive nor truly restful. A blank canvas upon which the quiet moments of existence slowly unfold. It is a suspension, a prolonged pause in the rhythm of being, and eventually, you sleep again, pulled down into that deep, blank unconsciousness, though you do not remember precisely when the transition occurs. When the line between wakefulness and oblivion finally blurs and dissolves, the darkness simply continues, profound and all-encompassing. The morning light, when it finally arrives, does not burst into your small cottage with any vigor. Instead, it filters slowly through the closed wooden shutters, thin and diffused, like watered milk. It possesses no urgency, no warmth, no compelling strength to rouse you from your deep, profound slumber. It simply lets itself in, gradually, almost imperceptibly, as though even the very light of the new day is weary, heavy with its own unseen burdens. You do not awaken with a start, nor with the insistent promptings of a new day's tasks. You simply open your eyes when the dull, pervasive gray light has completely filled the tiny cracks in the thatched roof above your head and subtly begun to outline the familiar, sturdy edge of the wooden stool in the corner of your small, quiet room. You sit up, slowly, each movement deliberate and measured. Your neck is stiff, a persistent ache that has become a constant companion, a dull throb that reminds you of the hard, unyielding surface of your bed. Your ankles click, a faint, dry sound as you pivot them, a quiet protest from your joints. The air that fills your lungs smells faintly of cold ash from the long-dead hearth, and the subtle, comforting scent of old, well-worn linen, a smell that speaks of countless quiet nights spent in this very room. The fire, you recall with a quiet sigh, never got relit. The effort had seemed too much yesterday, and the cold, damp wood remained uncollected, a task perpetually deferred. You reach for your rough woolen robe, its familiar weight, a comfort against the chill, and fumble patiently at the knot of its belt, your fingers stiff and clumsy in the cool air. Your bare feet find the familiar, cold-packed earth floor, then slide into the worn, soft slippers that wait patiently beside your bed. From there, you move, slowly and deliberately, onto the cooler, unyielding surface of the flagstones that make up the main room of your cottage. There's a loaf of bread left from yesterday's baking, a quiet, simple promise of sustenance. You pick it up. It is hard, its crust unyielding beneath your touch, but undeniably edible. You tear off a piece, a small, deliberate act, and begin to chew, slowly, meticulously, each bite a quiet, rhythmic effort. The dry, unyielding crust makes your jaw ache, a dull, familiar discomfort that spreads through your face. You consume it, silently, without rush, appreciating its simple presence. You move on then to the chamber pot. It stands patiently in its corner, a quiet sentinel of the night's passage. It is full, again. Its contents slosh faintly as you lift it, a sound that echoes strangely in the quiet room. You carry it with deliberate care, your steps slow and measured, towards the back door of your cottage, pushing it open with your shoulder. The cold, crisp morning air rushes in, carrying the familiar sense of damp earth and distant, decaying leaves. You step outside, placing your feet carefully on the muddy ground, ensuring you don't slip. Behind the cottage, a short, well-worn path leads to a particular spot by the hedge, where the grass is already visibly burnt and sparse from repeated, daily use. You pour out the contents of the pot with a quiet, efficient motion. The air shifts subtly with the action, and you catch the faint, familiar scent, an acrid, pungent odor, but one that has become deeply ingrained, intimately known, a part of the daily ritual. You return inside, closing the door gently behind you, shutting out the cool and different morning. You rinse the pot meticulously, using a scoop of rainwater from the wooden barrel that sits patiently by your back door, its surface still and dark. The cool, clean water swirls inside the pot, washing away the remnants of the night. You then place it carefully, deliberately, back in its designated corner, its clean, empty presence a quiet satisfaction. You find yourself looking at the pot for a moment too long, your gaze fixed on its familiar shape. You try for a slow, quiet moment to remember exactly when you first began emptying it this way, when this particular routine became so ingrained, so necessary, so quietly different from the simple, unthinking morning ritual it once was. You cannot recall the precise moment. The memory feels blurred, lost in the quiet, pervasive passage of the strangely altered days. Later, as the morning slowly advances, you clean, not because anything in particular is glaringly dirty, not because dust motes dance visibly in shafts of sunlight, for the light is too weak for that, but simply because it is something to do. It is a structured activity in a world that increasingly feels devoid of structure. The rags you use are fraying at the edges, their fabric thin and worn. The wooden handle of the broom splinters against your palm as you push it slowly across the packed earth floor. You sweep the same corner of the room, slowly and deliberately, not once, but 3 times, each stroke methodical and unhurried. The simple, repetitive motion is a quiet comfort, a way to occupy your hands and your mind. Then, when the corner is as clean as it will ever be, you sit. You return to the wooden stool by the hearth, its hard surface a familiar point of contact, and you simply sit, watching the quiet dust motes that only you can see, dancing faintly in the muted light. The hours pass this way now, measured not in moments or in tasks completed, but in habits. They flow from one simple, deliberate action to the next. A quiet, almost meditative sequence. Wake. Eat. Empty. Wipe. Sit. Sleep. Each action a small, contained unit of time, a familiar anchor in the fluid, uncertain days. Your sleep, when it finally comes, is often dreamless, a blank expanse of unconsciousness. Or, when dreams do visit, they are filled with images too faint, too ethereal to remember upon waking, dissolving like mist in the first moments of returning consciousness, leaving no trace behind. Only a vague, lingering sense of something almost felt. Outside your cottage, the world no longer moves at a pace you can easily follow, or perhaps it no longer moves at all. The rhythm that once dictated its industrious life has slowed profoundly. The mill, whose clattering gears and turning wheel once provided a constant, energetic hum, now turns less often, its noise a rare and distinct sound. The baker's chimney, which once belched forth a consistent plume of fragrant smoke, signaling fresh bread for the hungry village, now smokes only on alternate days, a sporadic reminder of interrupted commerce. The church bell, which once rang with such clarity and purpose, now tolls half-heartedly, its sound muted, its intervals uncertain, as though it too has forgotten its full, resonant voice. You are still here. Your cottage stands. Your chamber pot is in its designated corner, clean and waiting. Your bed, simple but ready, is made. There is, you observe with a quiet, almost poignant sense of resignation, a place for everything, and everything mostly remains in its place, a quiet, immutable order in a world that feels increasingly out of balance. There is a time, some of the old folk used to say, their voices hushed with a quiet reverence, a sacred interval that fell between the deep stillness of midnight and the first faint glimmer of dawn, when the soul, freed from the day's earthly concerns, was said to drift loose. It was a time when the veil between this world and the next was thinnest, a moment of profound, quiet connection. You have not felt your own soul drift for some time now. It feels tethered, held fast by the quiet, persistent realities of your existence. But you have, inexplicably and without conscious effort, begun waking then, regularly, almost softly, as if summoned by an unseen hand. Your return to consciousness is much like the gentle, familiar groan of the old house itself, as it settles deeper into the profound, pervasive cold of the late night hours, a subtle shift, a quiet complaint from ancient timbers. You rise again from your bed, not from any urgency, not from a pressing need or a sudden alarming sound. No, you rise purely from habit, a deep-seated routine that has taken root within you, a quiet compulsion. The chamber pot, standing patiently in its corner, does not need emptying. You emptied it carefully, just before you first lay down. Yet, you find yourself inspecting it all the same, your gaze lingering on its familiar contours in the dim, almost indiscernible light, a small, quiet act of meticulous observation. Then, you move, slowly and deliberately, towards the hearth, that empty space where no fire now burns, its stones long cold, its maw a dark, silent, void. You bring a blanket with you, the familiar coarse wool, and wrap it tight around your shoulders, its weight a comforting pressure. The cold that now permeates the cottage is not sharp, not biting, not the kind that stings the skin. It is a quiet, cold, a deep, pervasive chill that seems to emanate from the very air itself, sinking slowly into your bones, a constant, low presence that defies the thin fabric of your clothing. You think of the past, vaguely, not of individual faces, not of specific conversations, but of schedules, of rhythms that once governed your life with comforting predictability. You remember, with a quiet clarity, when you used to rise early, a bustling awakening that mirrored the village itself. You would break bread, its texture warm and yielding in your hands. You would feed the goats, their soft bleats a familiar morning sound, their small warm bodies brushing against your legs. You recall the distinct sound of others in the village, their footsteps on the muddy track, their soft greetings as they passed by your door, a steady stream of human presence. Now, you barely hear the muffled sound of feet on the road outside. The quiet has deepened. Most who remain in the village, you observe, do not walk far. Their journeys are short, confined to the immediate vicinity of their homes, their movements slow and deliberate, mirroring your own. There is talk, still, whispers that echo from older times, from a past that feels increasingly distant and perhaps almost mythical. They speak of a time when 2 sleeps were once common, a shared rhythm that governed the lives of most folk. A first sleep would commence at dusk, a natural surrender to the encroaching darkness, lasting until near midnight, a period of deep, restorative rest. Then, an interlude of waking time would follow, a sacred pause in the middle of the night. It was a time for quiet thought, for mending clothes by the faint glow of a dying ember, for reading by candlelight, for whispering with God, for contemplating the mysteries of the universe. And then, after these few hours of quiet wakefulness, a second sleep would claim you, a profound, unbroken slumber that lasted until the first, pale hint of dawn. You've heard that the monks, those quiet custodians of ancient traditions, still adhere to this very rhythm within the silent walls of the priory, their lives ordered by the precise cadence of their bells. You wonder, a quiet contemplative thought, if this ancient rhythm, now inexplicably resurfacing, is why you find yourself now, regularly, waking in the profound middle of the night, pulled gently from your first, long sleep, as though your body is trying to re-establish a forgotten pattern. There is no candle lit, no flickering flame to cast dancing shadows. You sit in the profound murk, a sort of darkness that feels almost tangible, like a damp, heavy cloth draped softly over your eyes, obscuring all sight. The air itself feels thick with this absence of light. Occasionally, a faint, soft sound breaks the stillness. You hear the old house creak, its ancient timbers shifting gently, settling deeper into the quiet cold of the night, a familiar, comforting groan. Or perhaps you hear something in the walls, a faint, almost imperceptible scratching, a soft rustle, the quiet movements of a mouse, perhaps, or simply the subtle expansion and contraction of the wood itself in the changing temperature. These are the only sounds in the profound, quiet, tiny punctuation marks in the vast, unmoving silence. You do not move much. Your body feels rooted to the stool, a part of the quiet, still cottage. You do not think much. Your mind, too, is still, unburdened by urgent thoughts or anxieties. You simply are. You exist in this quiet blank space between one stretch of sleep and the next, a profound passive presence in the encompassing darkness. It is not an unpleasant state, merely a state of being, a quiet acceptance. Eventually, without any dramatic shift, the profound darkness of the room begins to grow a shade paler. It is an almost imperceptible change, a subtle lightening that first appears at the edges of the tiny cracks in the thatch. A faint, ethereal gray that speaks of the distant, approaching dawn. You rise, slowly, your body protesting slightly with a quiet sigh, and return to bed. It is more from routine than from any distinct desire for further rest. The act of returning to bed, of lying down, is simply the next step in this slow, predictable sequence of nocturnal habits. You lie down. The straw of your mattress pokes your side, a familiar, minor discomfort that barely registers. You pull the familiar, heavy woolen blanket higher, tucking it snugly around your chin, seeking the small measure of comfort it offers against the quiet cold. And then, without any particular thought, without any conscious effort or anticipation, you sleep again. The quiet darkness of the room seems to deepen once more around you, enveloping you in its soft, unseeing embrace. You do not remember precisely when the shift occurs, when the thin line between wakefulness and slumber finally blurs and dissolves. There are no dreams, no images, just a profound, blank unconsciousness, a deep, heavy slumber that stretches out before you, an almost perfect stillness, until the gentle, unhurried arrival of the next morning. The second sleep has arrived. The cock does not crow. It hasn't, you realize with a quiet, almost detached certainty, in months. A long, indeterminate stretch of time has passed since its vibrant call pierced the stillness of the dawn. You think perhaps it died, or perhaps simply vanished, though you cannot, for the life of you, remember when or how. The detail, like so many others now, is lost to the quiet haze of memory. Still, despite the absence of its insistent summons, you wake at the same time. A consistent, unbidden return to consciousness. It is as if some unseen hand, gentle but firm, lifts you from the depths of sleep just before the sun truly finishes rising, before its full light can assert itself over the lingering shadows of the night. The light outside, filtering faintly through the gaps in your shutters and the small, unglazed window, is a low, pervasive gray. It is the kind of light that seems neither here nor there, neither the true blackness of night, nor the clear brightness of day. It is simply a dull, almost hesitant suggestion of morning, a muted presence that offers little warmth or definition to the world beyond your cottage walls. You move slowly. You always do now. There is no rush, no sudden burst of energy or purpose to propel you forward. There is no distant bell to toll its morning rhythm from the priory, no urgent summons. There are no familiar footsteps echoing from the abbey, no sounds of monks beginning their day's quiet duties. And there is no clatter from neighbors, no distant voices, no sounds of activity from the nearby cottages. The world outside remains profoundly, unsettlingly quiet. You sit, slowly and deliberately, on the edge of your straw bed, its surface familiar beneath you. The coarse woolen blanket, a constant companion through the long, cold nights, falls across your knees, its weight a gentle, familiar pressure. You listen. You listen for something, anything at all that might break the profound silence that has settled so deeply into your small world. But all you hear is the soft, almost imperceptible hiss of cold air seeping in from under the door, a faint, continuous sound. It is so quiet, so rhythmic, that it sounds, uncannily, like breath itself, the slow, steady exhalation of the sleeping house. You reach out and touch the chamber pot. It is still cool to the touch, its ceramic surface absorbing the ambient chill of the room. Still empty, just as you left it before your second sleep. It's an old thing, this pot. Its glazed surface is worn, and a fine crack, like a spider's web, mars its integrity near the base, a testament to countless years of use, countless careful cleanings. But it has lasted. It has endured, just as you have. In your own quiet, unremarkable way, you carry it slowly to the threshold of your cottage, stepping carefully over the uneven floor. You set it gently near the door, where the first faint hint of the morning light, that pale, watery gray, touches its rim, casting a subtle, almost imperceptible sheen on its inner surface. This, you acknowledge with a quiet sense of ritual, is what you do, meticulously, each day. Then, before noon, before the sun can truly assert itself, you bring it back in again, a small, deliberate cycle of hygiene and order. There is bread, a loaf from yesterday, perhaps the day before. It is hard, its crust unyielding, but undeniably serviceable. A quiet, simple promise of sustenance. You do not eat it dry. Instead, you soak it, piece by slow piece, in a thin, warming broth. This broth, you recall, was warmed from yesterday's fire, a fire you had to rekindle slowly, patiently coaxing it into life with flint and steel. It was an act performed with the quiet, unwavering patience of a life lived now without urgency, without the relentless demands of the clock or the pressing needs of others. You chew each softened piece of bread without thinking, without conscious appreciation, the act of eating a purely mechanical function, a necessary intake of minimal energy. In the profound quiet that surrounds you, you find yourself remembering old customs, old ways that were once as ingrained as the beating of your own heart. How the chamber pot should never ever be emptied before sunrise, lest it invite ill fortune. How to position it just so, its opening facing precisely to the east if possible, to catch the first rays of the sun, a quiet blessing. You never questioned these habits before. They were not rules to be debated or understood. They just were, part of the unspoken fabric of your existence, passed down through generations. Now, in the stark, quiet light of this new reality, they linger in your mind, not as rigid commands, but like ghosts with gentle hands, guiding your slow, deliberate movements, their presence a faint, ethereal comfort. You clean the pot. You do this carefully, meticulously, your movements unhurried. There is no rush, no pressing demand from anyone. No one is watching you, not truly, not in this quiet, almost deserted village. But still, you keep to the motions, the precise, ritualistic movements passed down by mothers and wives who are now long gone, their faces fading in your memory, their voices silent. Water, scooped from the barrel, ash, fine and gray, rubbed gently on the inner surface. Rinse, not too much splash, not a single drop wasted. Each action is performed with a quiet exactitude, a small, deliberate act of order in a world that feels increasingly disordered. When that is done, when the pot is gleaming dully and returned to its proper corner, you sit in the same chair by the hearth, the wooden surface familiar beneath you. You watch the thin, wavering column of smoke, weak and uncertain, as it climbs slowly, almost reluctantly, towards the gap in the stone chimney, its ephemeral gray form slowly dissolving into the dimness above. The morning does not arrive all at once. It creeps in with a profound reluctance, a slow, almost grudging surrender to the coming day. You feel the weight of it settle in your shoulders, a pervasive, quiet burden that you now carry constantly. Still, you do not resist. You do not expect much from the day. There are no grand plans, no fervent hopes, no anticipated joys. You do not resent it either. This slow, quiet unfolding of time. You simply let it pass. You let the hours drift by like unmoored boats on a still gray lake, observing their slow passage without judgment, without desire for change. You might walk to the edge of the lane later, perhaps just to stand and gaze at the empty track that leads into the distance. Or you might not. It makes no difference, you realize with a quiet, profound certainty. The world, or what remains of it, will continue its slow, quiet existence, utterly indifferent to your movements or your stillness. The morning passes, then the afternoon, then the long, dark evening, all blurring into one continuous, quiet expanse. You remember, with a quiet clarity that feels both comforting and profoundly melancholic. When the bell would truly ring, it was a sound deeply ingrained in the very fabric of your days, a constant, resonant presence. It would begin low and slow, its rich, sonorous tone drawn out, seemingly pulled through the cool, ethereal mist of morning like a heavy, unseen spoon through thick, golden honey. Its sound, traveling across the dew-laden fields and settling gently over the thatched roofs of the village, marked time with an unwavering precision, not only for waking, a quiet summons from the depths of slumber, but for the intricate cycle of prayers, for the simple, comforting regularity of meals, and for the blessed, necessary periods of rest. Without it now, time feels softer, more fluid, losing its sharp edges. It is like a wet cloth, perpetually soaked and wrung, then folded again upon itself, its contours indistinct, its passage amorphous and unanchored. You wake again, though you hadn't meant to sleep, hadn't consciously sought the oblivion of slumber. Your return to awareness is gentle, a slow, quiet surfacing from a deep, dreamless well. The fire, which you had no energy to kindle, has long gone out, leaving the hearth a cold, dark void. The last ash crumbles silently beneath some unseen pressure, utterly devoid of even a faint, lingering glow, a testament to the absolute absence of heat. You do not rise at once, not immediately. There is no need, no urgent call to action. The day, you observe with a quiet, internal certainty, has gone nowhere. It awaits you, still, unmoving, stretching out before you like an untouched canvas. You reach for your shawl, your fingers finding its familiar texture in the dim light. The wool is scratchy against your skin, but its rough embrace offers a familiar, if minimal, warmth against the pervasive chill of the cottage. You pull it tightly around your shoulders, drawing it close, a small act of self-comfort. And then, you simply listen. You listen to the house, its sighs, a subtle, almost imperceptible sound of ancient wood settling, of timbers shifting gently against each other. The wood creaks softly in the walls, a low, drawn-out sound like a slow yawn, a quiet complaint that comes with age, with the subtle shift of centuries. Or perhaps you think it is merely the restless wind outside, pressing against the old structure. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it is the quiet, insistent sound of memory lingering in the air, echoing in the stillness. You walk outside, stepping carefully over the familiar irregularities of the packed earth floor. The lane is still empty. It always is. Now, its worn track, once bustling with the daily rhythms of villagers, lies silent and untrod. Moss, a soft, verdant carpet, has started to grow slowly, patiently, along the edges of the ancient stones where once countless feet passed daily, wearing them smooth. It is a quiet, subtle reclamation by nature. You step lightly around it, your movements soft and deliberate, not wishing to disturb its delicate growth. A bird sings once, its brief, clear note piercing the profound quiet. A surprising splash of sound in the stillness. Then it stops, as abruptly as it began. You wait, standing utterly still, your head tilted slightly, listening intently for its return, for another offering of sound, but it does not return. The silence resumes, deeper, more absolute than before. You continue your slow, deliberate walk towards the edge of the village, towards the familiar gray silhouette of the chapel. Its massive wooden doors are shut, firmly closed, offering no invitation to enter, but you do not try them. Instead, you sit on the cold, unyielding stone just outside them, a familiar spot. It's where you used to rest, you recall, when the bell would ring for prime. That early morning service, its clear, resonant peal carrying on the cool, crisp air. The old woman who lived 2 cottages over, her face a map of wrinkles and wisdom, used to say that the body remembers even when the mind forgets. Perhaps that is true, you muse with a quiet, internal certainty. Perhaps your body, in its quiet, persistent habits, remembers the rhythm of the bell, the designated time for rest and contemplation, even when the bell itself no longer rings. You are here now, drawn to this place of quiet recollection, compelled by an unseen, internal pull. You do not pray, exactly. The formal words, the familiar supplications, do not form on your lips, but you think. Not thoughts that demand answers, not urgent questions that clamor for resolution, just the kind of thoughts that float gently, aimlessly, and then return, soft and ephemeral, like dandelion puffs carried on a gentle breeze. You think of stew, its rich, warm aroma filling the air, a distant memory of comfort and sustenance, of clean sheets crisp and cool against your skin, a simple luxury long forgotten. Of old faces, their features blurred by time and distance, but their presence still faintly felt. And you think of how the bell sounded, that familiar, resonant bell, when its clarity was subtly muffled by a thick, soft blanket of snow, its peal softened, made more ethereal, yet still distinct, still present. When your knees begin to ache, a familiar, dull complaint from the hard, cold stone beneath you, you stand again. The movement is slow, deliberate. The air around you has warmed slightly, a subtle shift in temperature that signals the slow, reluctant advance of the day. You head home, not because something specific calls you, not because a task or duty awaits. No, you head home simply because there is nowhere else to go, nowhere else that beckons, nowhere else that offers even the quiet, familiar solace of your cottage. You enter, closing the door gently behind you. You sit, slowly, in the familiar wooden chair by the cold hearth, its surface worn smooth by your presence. And then you wait. You wait for the day to decide what it is, what shape it will take, what silent moments it will bring. Time once had a distinct texture, a tangible quality. It was measured in the hard, clear rings of the bell, in the distinct shadows cast by the sun, in the precise completion of daily tasks. Now it is more like fog, a vast, formless expanse that surrounds you, obscuring clear vision, softening all edges. You pass through it, slowly, quietly, without resistance, and it, in turn, passes through you, leaving no distinct trace, only a vague, lingering sense of its profound, silent presence. The hours continue their slow, unhurried drift, one into the other, blurring into a continuous, quiet expanse. You do not remember when you last emptied it. The precise timing, the specific day or hour has blurred and dissolved into the general flow of days. But that, you've come to understand, is the very nature of things now, quietly recurring, each action fading imperceptibly into a profound sameness, a continuous, undifferentiated stream of moments. The chamber pot rests patiently under your bed, a constant, unobtrusive presence. It is made of white ceramic, its surface smooth and cool to the touch, marred only by a fine, almost imperceptible hairline crack near its handle. It is the kind of flaw that grows slowly, painstakingly, with time and gentle pressure, but which never quite gives way, remaining a subtle imperfection rather than a total collapse. You rise not because you are compelled by any external force, not because a task urgently calls your name or a bell demands your attention. Instead, you rise because your legs, accustomed to a life of movement, feel a subtle, insistent need for motion, a quiet protest against prolonged stillness. The chamber pot, when you retrieve it, is not entirely full, but neither is it empty. It holds a perceptible weight. You lift it with both hands, slowly, carefully, a practiced motion. You've performed this ritual so many times now, over so many quiet, unremarkable days, that your body remembers the precise rhythm, the ingrained sequence of movements without conscious thought. Lift, carry, tip. You cross the small, overgrown courtyard behind your cottage. The ground beneath your feet is soft and damp, yielding slightly with each step. There is a specific, worn spot near the compost heap, half covered now in sparse, scattered straw. This is where you empty it now. The latrine down the lane, a communal convenience for the village, collapsed months ago, its timbers rotting and giving way without fanfare. And no one, you observe with a quiet, internal resignation, rebuilt it. The structure simply lies there, a forgotten ruin, a testament to what once was, and to what no longer is. When the Black Death passed through this village, a silent, pervasive wave of destruction, it took so many. It took the carpenter, whose strong hands could shape wood with effortless grace, whose expertise could rebuild a latrine. And it took the mason, whose skill with stone could have ensured its lasting repair. And it took the tanner's wife, a formidable woman with a sharp tongue and a kind heart, who used to scold the boys, her voice ringing clear across the lane, for the very act of relieving themselves behind the chapel, reminding them of the proper order of things. Their absences, like so many others, are felt not as a dramatic void, but as a slow, quiet thinning of the world, a gradual reduction in the sounds and faces that once filled this small village. You tip the pot slowly, deliberately. A faint wisp of steam rises in the cold morning air, ethereal and fleeting, quickly dissipating into the pervasive dampness. The smell, that distinct, pungent aroma, is familiar now, no longer unpleasant, no longer something to shy away from. It simply is. Like the quiet creak of the old floorboards as you shift your weight, or the soft scrape of a wooden spoon against the bottom of a bowl during a meal. It is a part of the quiet, undeniable texture of your solitary existence, unremarkable and constant. You return inside, carefully, and rinse the pot with cold rainwater from the barrel that sits outside your door, its surface still and dark. You shake out the last lingering drops, the small, quiet sounds echoing in the stillness, before placing it back beneath the bed, angled just so, its familiar presence restored. There was a time, you remember, with a faint, almost dream-like quality when this simple domestic task would have been someone else's burden. An apprentice, perhaps, or a younger child, whose small hands would have carried it without question. But now, you observe with a quiet, unwavering clarity, there is only you. You are the sole custodian of these small, quiet duties, the last reliable presence in this dwindling world. You sit by the hearth, though the fire as usual has not been lit, its coals long cold and gray. Yet, you notice, with a subtle shift of perception, that the hearthstones themselves are still faintly warm, retaining some residual heat from the distant hours when the sun might have touched them. You imagine the day's warmth as a slow, benevolent tide, gently coming in, gradually filling the corners of the room. It will reach you eventually, you think, a quiet, patient certainty that demands no effort. You reach for a boiled egg, its shell cool and smooth beneath your fingers. You peel it slowly, meticulously, the delicate membrane separating with a soft, tearing sound. You eat half, consuming it with the same quiet, unhurried deliberation with which you perform all your tasks. You set the rest aside, its pale, oval shape a small, silent promise of future sustenance. Nothing moves quickly anymore, neither inside your cottage nor in the world beyond. Meals are no longer vibrant events, occasions for communal gathering and conversation, but merely punctuation between silences, small, deliberate acts that mark the quiet flow of time, providing a brief, tangible anchor. You remember your mother once arguing, her voice sharp with conviction, about the proper time to empty the pot. She insisted it should always be done before compline, the last prayer of the day, an act of setting things right before nightfall. Your father, however, a man of quiet, firm habits, maintained it should be done after matins, with the first light of dawn, a clean start to the day. Both had their reasons, their logical explanations rooted in tradition and practicality. Now, you realize, there are no rules. The old customs, once so binding, have dissolved, leaving behind a quiet freedom, an absence of external expectation. You empty it when the weight feels just heavy enough to notice, when its subtle presence beneath your bed becomes a quiet, insistent hum in your awareness. It is a decision based purely on internal sensing, on personal timing. You press your palm flat against the surface of the small wooden table beside you. The wood is worn to a smooth, almost glossy sheen, polished by countless elbows, by the repeated placement of plates, and by the relentless, quiet passage of time. The chamber pot, its daily ritual completed, now rests patiently beneath your bed, its familiar shape a quiet comfort in the dimness. Time, you observe, as you sit in the stillness, rests all around you. It stretches, vast and unhurried, a profound, enveloping presence. The air is still. The house is still. And you, in the midst of it all, are still. You lie down before the sun has fully surrendered its light, before the last vestiges of the day have completely faded from the vast, indifferent sky. The western horizon, glimpsed through the small, unglazed window of your cottage, glows dimly. A final, hesitant display of color. A dusty, ethereal, violet, bleeding slowly into a profound, deepening blue. There is no rush to undress, no urgency to shed the familiar comfort of your daytime garments. You perform the simple ritual slowly, meticulously, pulling off your outer tunic, then your breeches. You fold them neatly, carefully, pressing the rough fabric between your palms, and place them beside the small wooden stool. A small, quiet act of order in a world that often feels disorderly. The wool blanket, coarse and heavy, settles over your body, its familiar weight a comforting presence. It warms you slowly, deliberately, not with an immediate rush of heat, but with a deep, pervasive warmth, like the gradual, insistent sinking into thick, yielding clay. Your limbs feel heavy, rooted to the mattress beneath you. You rest your hands on your stomach, your fingers gently curled inward, a posture of quiet repose. This is how you sleep now. Still, almost motionless. A quiet presence in the profound stillness of the room. There is no candle, no flickering flame tonight to cast dancing shadows on the uneven walls, no faint gleam to illuminate the familiar contours of your humble dwelling. Just the soft, fading light of twilight, a last, lingering caress from the dying day, and the quiet memory of fire, the imagined warmth, the gentle crackle, the ephemeral glow, a sensation now residing only in the quiet corners of your mind. You close your eyes, slowly, deliberately, allowing the last threads of visual perception to unravel and disappear into the encompassing darkness. Sleep, you recall, with a distant, almost detached sense of observation, used to come in halves. The distinct, familiar rhythm of first sleep, then the waking interlude, followed by second sleep. Now, it comes all at once, a sudden, blank descent into unconsciousness, a profound, unannounced arrival. Or, inexplicably, it does not come at all, leaving you adrift in the long, quiet hours of the night. You no longer count the hours, no longer mark the passage of time by the silent, unseen movements of the sun and moon. The bells from the priory, those once reliable anchors of the day, stopped ringing long ago. Their silence now so absolute, so ingrained, that their absence is no longer a void, but simply a new kind of normal. You remember, with a quiet clarity that pierces the veils of memory, a time when sleep was precisely divided, when the hours between the deep quiet of midnight and the first, faint sound of lauds were reserved for dreams and for prayers. People, you recall, would rise from their beds, their movements soft and unhurried. They would tend the fire, coaxing new life from the embers, its small flame a comforting presence in the dark. They would whisper secrets in the profound quiet of the night, their voices low and intimate, sharing hushed thoughts that dared not be spoken in the brighter, more public hours of the day. But no one wakes in the middle of the night anymore. Not in this quiet world, this greatly diminished village, where the remaining few drift through their days like shadows. Those who remain sleep as if drawing breath from stone, their slumber deep and uninterrupted, a profound, almost total unconsciousness that seems to mimic the very stillness of the earth itself. They are unbothered by dreams, untroubled by the need for nocturnal thought or prayer. Their sleep is an unbroken, heavy expanse. You do not dream, not vividly. The narratives, the strange, coherent stories that once populated your slumber have faded. Perhaps, occasionally, a fleeting flash of a face, indistinct, almost forgotten, or the brief, disorienting image of a lantern in the thick, swirling fog, its light a muted halo in the pervasive dampness. Or, most poignantly, the faint, ethereal sound of your brother's voice calling your name, a familiar sound from a distant past, a quiet echo in the vast silence. But these, if they appear at all, are fleeting, ephemeral. They dissolve upon waking, leaving no lasting trace, no sharp edges of memory. If waking happens at all, the very concept feels fluid now, a soft, indistinct boundary between one state of being and another. You shift slightly on your bed, a subtle movement, a gentle adjustment of your body. The mattress cradles your form, its straw interior flattened and molded by repetition, by countless nights of your quiet presence. The chamber pot rests in its usual place beneath the bed, a quiet, reassuring presence in the darkness. The wooden spoon which you used for your small, quiet meal rests in its usual place on the table beside the hearth. You, too, are in your usual place, your familiar spot in the quiet rhythm of the cottage, a point of stillness in the vast, unhurried flow of time. A quiet draft curls subtly under the edge of the wooden door, a faint breath of cold air that slips into the stillness of the room, a ghost of movement. You do not stir. You do not move. You simply feel its subtle presence, a fleeting sensation against your skin, and then it passes. Tomorrow will arrive in its own time, or it won't. Either outcome, you realize with a quiet, profound acceptance that is settled deep within your soul, is fine. The days, since the great silence descended upon the village, have grown long and soft, losing their distinct shape, like a woolen tunic washed too many times, its fibers loosened, its texture blurred, its edges indistinct. You are not afraid. There is little left now to truly disturb you. The sharp edges of fear have dulled, worn smooth by countless days of quiet endurance. You have done your chores, those small, repetitive acts that provide a quiet order. You have emptied the pot, fulfilling its humble daily ritual. You have eaten your share, even if only half an egg, a small act of sustenance. Your obligations are met. Your breath slows, it deepens, and slows. Each inhalation and exhalation becomes more measured, more deliberate, more profound, and slows further, until the very rhythm of your sleep, that quiet, steady ebb and flow of breath, becomes one with the deep, resonant creak of the rafters above your head, a sound of the ancient house settling into its slumber. It becomes one with the distant, almost imperceptible bark of a dog, a solitary sound lost in the vast, silent fields. It becomes one with the faint, ethereal wind sighing through an empty chapel, a mournful, yet profoundly peaceful sound that carries no distinct message, only the quiet breath of the night. You are not alone, not truly. The village is quiet now, profoundly so, its former bustle reduced to an almost complete stillness. But the silent presence of the earth, the ancient rhythm of the wind, the quiet existence of the house itself, these are your companions now in the longest sleep. And soon, very soon, you will rest. Forever, or just until morning. The distinction, in this profound quiet, no longer holds any meaning. And now, dear listener, If your eyes have grown heavy, may sleep find you gently. If you're still awake, may the hush of history linger a little longer. Until next time, rest well and dream in whispers.